Hello Nigerians, we have a breaking news and this is very serious. I need you to stay with me on this one because by the time we finish today, you will understand why this story has thrown the political space into confusion. Please stay till the end. Don't skip ahead because there are layers to this matter that you cannot afford to miss. This story concerns a woman who was once at the very center of one of the biggest financial scandals in this administration. A woman who was suspended from the Federal Executive Council under a cloud of allegations involving hundreds of millions of naira. And now, less than 3 years later, that same woman has been handed a senior position in President Bola Tinubu's 2027 re-election campaign. This is landing at a very sensitive moment, a time when this government is trying to convince Nigerians that it is serious about fighting corruption, and a time when the opposition is watching every single appointment with a magnifying glass. Before I continue, let me ask you, if you are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button, tap the like icon and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any update as this story develops. It helps us bring you more of this kind of reporting, plain and straightforward, no sentiments attached. Now, back to the news. Let's take you through exactly what has happened, step by step, date by date, so that by the end of this segment, you will have the full picture in your hands.
Let's start from the beginning because context matters here. Dr. Betta Edu is a Nigerian medical doctor and politician, born in Lagos and trained at the University of Calabar. Before she became a federal minister, she served as Cross River State Commissioner for Health, and before that, she rose through the ranks of the All Progressives Congress, eventually becoming the party's national women leader in March 2022. When President Tinubu formed his first cabinet in August 2023, Edu was appointed Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, a ministry that sits directly on some of the most sensitive social intervention funds in the country, money meant for the poorest and most vulnerable Nigerians. That detail is important. Keep it in your mind as we move forward because it becomes the center of everything that follows. For a few months, Edu ran that ministry quietly, largely out of the national spotlight. But that changed dramatically in January 2024, when a leaked internal memo turned her name into one of the most talked about in the country for all the wrong reasons. We are going to walk through exactly what that memo said, who signed it, and what happened afterward. This is where the documented facts begin, and I want you to pay close attention because these are not allegations from social media. These are matters that came from official government statements themselves.
Here is what we know for certain. A letter dated December 20, 2023 and reportedly signed by Minister Betta Edu was addressed to the then Accountant General of the Federation, Yilwatda. The letter carried the title Mandate for Payment of Grant for Vulnerable Groups in Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Lagos, and Ogun states. In that letter, the minister instructed the Accountant General to transfer the sum of 585,198,500 naira. That figure again, roughly 585 million naira, into the account of an individual identified as Onielu Bridget Mojisola. Now, here is a critical fact that a lot of people miss. The Accountant General's office did not act on that instruction. Madene's office publicly distanced itself from the payment, describing the arrangement as improper and stating that no such bulk disbursement should ever be made into an individual's personal account in the name of a government project. When that memo became public, the reaction from the presidency was swift. On January 8, 2024, presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngelale issued a statement announcing that President Tinubu had suspended Dr. Betta Edu from office with immediate effect. The president also directed the then EFCC chairman, Ola Olukoyede, to conduct what the statement called a thorough investigation into all aspects of the financial transactions connected to the ministry. Edu, for her part, denied any wrongdoing. She maintained that the payment instruction had followed due process, and she suggested publicly that the allegations were an attempt to damage her reputation.
Now, this is where the story takes a much bigger turn than many Nigerians realized at the time. What started as a single memo, about 585 million naira, did not stay that way for long. The EFCC invited Edu to its Abuja headquarters for questioning, and she honored that invitation. But as investigators dug deeper into the financial dealings of the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry, the numbers involved grew dramatically. By April 2024, EFCC Chairman Olukoyede disclosed that investigators were tracing money across more than 50 separate bank accounts connected to the matter. Based on the figures reported at the time, the total sum under investigation was estimated at around 30 billion naira, far beyond the original 585 million that first triggered the scandal. Think about that for a moment. What began as one leaked memo had, within a matter of months, ballooned into an investigation spanning dozens of accounts and tens of billions of naira. That is the scale we are talking about here. Despite the scope of that investigation, here is a fact that remains true as of today. Betta Edu has not been formally charged in court, and the EFCC has never publicly released the findings of its probe. Rights groups and civil society organizations have, at different points, publicly pressured the Commission to make its findings known. As of the making of this report, that report remains unpublished, and no criminal charges have been filed against her over this matter.
While the investigation carried on quietly in the background, Betta Edu's position in government did not survive. On October 23, 2024, President Tinubu carried out a cabinet reshuffle that saw 5 ministers removed from office altogether, 10 reassigned to new portfolios, and 7 new ministers brought in. Betta Edu was among those whose ministerial journey ended that day. She was replaced at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation by Professor Nentawe Yilwatda, who had previously been announced as one of the newly appointed ministers following the earlier scandal-driven reshuffle. Presidency officials at the time made clear that Edu's exit was tied to the unresolved controversy. The message from government spokespeople was blunt. There was no longer room for her at the cabinet table, at least not for the time being. For close to 2 years after that, Betta Edu largely stepped back from the front lines of public office. She remained a registered member of the All Progressives Congress, but she was no longer a minister, and the shadow of that EFCC investigation continued to hang over her name whenever it resurfaced in the news. That, Nigerians, is where most people assumed the story of Betta Edu and this administration would quietly end. A minister suspended, replaced, investigated, and gradually forgotten. But as we are about to show you, that assumption turned out to be wrong.
Now, let's bring you to the present moment, because this is the breaking part of tonight's story. Over the weekend, the All Progressive Congress formally unveiled its Presidential Campaign Council for the 2027 general election, the structure that will drive President Tinubu's bid for a second term in office. Here is the layout of that council, as officially announced. President Tinubu himself chairs the council. Vice President Kashim Shettima and APC National Chairman Nentawe Yilwatda, yes, the same Yilwatda who replaced Edu as minister, both serve as vice chairman. Former Zamfara State Governor Abdulaziz Yari was named Director General of the Council, while Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma takes the role of Secretary. Buried within that long list of appointments was a name that immediately caught the attention of political observers and journalists across the country: Dr. Betta Edu, appointed as Director of Women Mobilisation for the entire campaign structure. Let that sink in for a second. The same woman who was suspended from the Federal Executive Council over an unresolved allegation involving hundreds of millions, later tens of billions of naira, has now been handed one of the more visible and consequential roles in the president's own re-election machinery, responsible for mobilizing women voters across all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory ahead of 2027. And Nigerians, Betta Edu's appointment did not happen in isolation. Also named to the same campaign council was Ngozi Olejeme,
the former chairperson of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, known by its acronym NSITF. Olejeme's own legal troubles are, in some ways, further along than Edu's. According to court records reported in the Nigerian press, she has been arraigned before a federal high court in Abuja over allegations of money laundering connected to NSITF funds, with figures reported to be in the region of 1 billion naira. Unlike Edu, whose case has not yet reached a courtroom, Olejeme's matter is an active trial before a sitting judge. So what we have here is not a single isolated appointment that could be explained away as an oversight. We have two individuals, both previously linked to serious financial allegations involving public funds, both now sitting inside the structure that will run the sitting president's campaign for another term. That pattern is exactly what has fueled the criticism you are about to hear. It's worth pausing here to be precise about something, because accuracy matters in this kind of reporting. Neither Edu nor Olejeme has been convicted of any crime as of this broadcast. Olejeme's case is before the courts and the outcome has not yet been decided. Edu has not been formally charged at all. These remain allegations and ongoing legal processes, not final judgments. That distinction matters, and we will return to it.
Now, let's hear the strongest version in favor of these appointments, because fairness demands that we do. APC National Publicity Secretary Bolaji Abdullahi addressed the controversy directly, describing the campaign council as something close to a rehabilitation system, a platform in his framing for people facing unresolved questions over corruption and public accountability to continue contributing to the party and the country while their legal matters remain unresolved. Beyond the party's official position, other political figures have defended the president's right, as the leader of his party, to select whoever he considers most capable of delivering electoral victory in 2027. Their argument runs roughly like this. Political campaign structures are not courtrooms, and mobilizing voters is a different kind of skill from running a Ministry of Finance. Betta Edu, whatever her legal troubles, was previously the APC's national women leader before she ever became a minister, meaning she has direct, proven experience organizing women across the party's structure. From that point of view, her appointment is less about rewarding wrongdoing and more about deploying someone with a demonstrated track record in the exact task she has now been assigned. Supporters of the appointments also point to a broader principle that no one has actually been convicted here, and that sidelining people indefinitely over unproven allegations without due process ever concluding one way or the other raises its own fairness concerns. If the courts or the EFCC eventually clear both women, the argument goes, then today's criticism will look premature.
But of course, Nigerians, not everyone is buying that explanation, and the opposition has not stayed quiet. The African Democratic Congress, the ADC, issued a direct challenge to the federal government, specifically asking officials to clarify the current status of the corruption cases involving both Betta Edu and Ngozi Olejeme before their campaign roles proceed any further. The party's underlying argument is that political usefulness should not quietly erase questions of accountability, that the same energy this government claims to bring to fighting corruption should apply evenly whether the person involved is an ally or an opponent. Social commentator Madi Shehu also raised his voice on this matter, questioning what standard exactly was used to select members of this campaign team and suggesting that the inclusion of individuals still facing unresolved corruption allegations undermines the credibility of the council as a whole. And here is the deeper concern that many ordinary Nigerians online have echoed in the days since this council was unveiled. This government came into office in 2023 promising what it called renewed hope, with anti-corruption as one of its central pillars. Every time a figure connected to a major financial scandal is elevated rather than held to account, it becomes harder for that message to land with a public that is already skeptical of promises from the political class. Now,
Let's bring this down to earth for a moment, because it is easy to get lost in the politics of Abuja and forget what is actually at stake for the ordinary Nigerian sitting at home watching this video. Remember what that original 585 million naira was supposed to be for? Grants for vulnerable groups across 4 states. Money meant for people who have very little, people who depend on government intervention programs to survive from one month to the next. When funds meant for the poorest citizens become the subject of an unresolved scandal involving tens of billions of naira, and the person at the center of that story is later rewarded with a senior political appointment, that is not an abstract political story. That touches directly on whether Nigerians can trust that social intervention money actually reaches the people it was designed for. It also touches on something bigger: public trust in the institutions meant to hold power accountable. If the EFCC can spend more than 2 years investigating a matter involving 50 bank accounts and 30 billion naira without ever publishing its findings or filing a single charge, many Nigerians are left asking a simple question: does accountability in this country actually have teeth, or does it depend entirely on who you know and how useful you remain to those in power? These are not small questions. They go to the heart of what kind of democracy Nigerians are being asked to keep believing in.
Let's be fair and hold both sides of this argument up to the light one more time, because that is what responsible journalism demands of us. On one side, you have a government and a party arguing that no crime has been proven, that due process has not run its course, that political skill and public service should not be permanently disqualified by unresolved allegations, and that the president has every right to build a campaign structure with people he believes can deliver results. That is a coherent argument, and it is not unique to Nigeria. Plenty of political systems around the world grapple with how to treat officials who are under investigation but not yet convicted. On the other side, you have critics arguing that the optics here are simply too difficult to defend, that appointing not one but 2 individuals linked to major financial scandals into a campaign council at a time when neither case has been publicly resolved sends a signal that political loyalty can outweigh accountability. They argue that even if no crime is ever proven, the manner in which these matters have lingered, unresolved, unpublished, unexplained for 2 and 3 years respectively, is itself part of the problem. Both arguments are being made loudly in Nigeria's public square right now, and neither side is going away quietly. This is a debate that is likely to follow this administration all the way into the 2027 campaign season itself.
Now, before we close tonight, let's be honest with you about what remains unknown. Because a responsible report tells you not just what has happened, but what has not yet been answered. First, the EFCC has still not published the findings of its investigation into Betta Edu and the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry, more than 2 years after that probe was launched. Nigerians still do not know officially what investigators found across those 50-plus bank accounts. Second, it remains unclear whether Edu will ever be formally charged in connection with this matter, or whether the file will simply remain open indefinitely without resolution one way or the other. Third, we do not know how Ngozi Olejeme's ongoing money laundering trial will conclude, or what impact, if any, a conviction would have on her role within the campaign council should that outcome occur. Fourth, we do not yet know whether the federal government or the APC will respond directly to the ADC's demand for clarification on the status of these cases, or whether that demand will simply be brushed aside as opposition noise ahead of election season. These are the threads Nigerians should be watching closely as this story continues to develop in the weeks ahead.
So where do I stand on all of this, honestly speaking? I think the fairest path forward is the simplest one. Let the EFCC finish what it started and publish its findings one way or another. If there is a case to answer, let it go to court like Olejeme's has. If there is nothing there, then say so clearly and let Betta Edu serve in this campaign role with that cloud finally lifted. What Nigerians deserve is not silence stretched out for years. They deserve an answer, whatever that answer turns out to be. Here is what to keep watching in the days ahead. Whether the EFCC finally responds to the ADC's demand for clarity, whether any formal charges are ever filed against Betta Edu, how Olejeme's ongoing trial unfolds, and whether public pressure forces the party to reconsider any part of this campaign council structure before 2027 arrives. If this kind of straight-talking, fact-based reporting is what you come to this channel for, do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, drop your own thoughts in the comment section, and subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this story, because I promise you, this one is not finished yet. This has been your update here on Naija News Online. Stay informed, stay alert, and I'll see you in the next one.